I think Maggie likes some water. You like the water, huh? Good girl. So anyways, today's video, we're going to do the Mythbuster for the B.smithi. So I have my two B.smithi here. So let's get started. Now for the common names of the species. Alright, so here are the common names of the B.smithi, and some of them are really ambiguous. So Mexican red knee is the true one right here. Red leg, blood leg, and orange knee, I see them sometimes labeled in a few pet stores. So you gotta watch out for how they label them, because the red leg really is the B. emilia, the blood leg is the A. bicoloratum, the orange knee, sometimes it'll be B.smithi if you're lucky, because B.smithis are quite rare, and they almost look very similar to a smithi. Okay, so here is the Latin name for the species, Brachypelma smithi. It is pronounced as Brachypelma, not Brachypelma. Okay, so pet stores, availability, cost, age, and wild-caught captive bred. So this is very similar to the one that I did on the G. rosea. Now for availability in pet stores. Well, now they're starting to become a little more common. I see B.smithi nowadays. For here in Canada, like roughly a good 3-inch, 4-inch specimen now is about $100, but that's for an unsexed. If you were to go from a tarantula dealer and buy, like, let's say an adult female, you're probably looking at over 200 to 250 in Canada. I know in many places in the US and maybe the UK and in Germany, there can be bought a lot cheaper. So the age, they're pretty consistent. The ages in most of the pet ones I find in pet stores are roughly around the 3-4 year old mark. They're not like G. roseas, because these are slightly faster growing than those rose hairs. So the only ones you can get are captive bred. Wild caught is illegal because these are one of the endangered species on the CITES list. So wild caughts, you're really in trouble if you have one, but captive bred is the best one. So typical cage setup, well, here are my two specimens, Athena and Scarlet. They both have very, very similar setups. I tend to, well, this is mainly how you house one. You can house one in a typical 5-gallon tank. So this is Scarlet right here. Let me get a light. There's Scarlet. Not in pre-molt yet, but this is a 5-gallon tank. All you need is a water dish. Some decoration is really optional, and a cave, a real must for the species. And typical substrate I use is Eco-Earth, the ones that comes in the brick, or potting soil. I tend to use African potting soil or any plantation soil that I get from Walmart or any plant store. I don't use wood chips. Wood chips are a really bad idea, because if it contains cedar, it's really deadly to tarantulas, and sawdust is really not a good idea to house a substrate because it's too low, too light substrate to use. Now, you don't see me too often using these glass enclosures because I just don't like them. A, they're too bulky. As you can see, they take up a lot of space. And for over here in Canada, these are really expensive. For an enclosure like this one, as you see right here, this is a 5-gallon tank with the guard mesh, the cover here, and the glass enclosure. It's $25 separate, so $50 in total. So to house 120 teas in glass enclosures is a big investment. So I tend to use the slightly alternative, which is you can get these at Walmart or the dollar store, or I get these from Canadian Tire. These are 6-liter Sterilite Rubbermaid shoebox enclosures. All you do is just simply use a drill bit or a soldering gun to drill some holes, and perfect, you have yourself a nice B.smithi enclosure. And this houses my sub-adult female B.smithi. Athena. And she's over here. Let me just put it on macro so you can see her colors. Yeah, these get up to fairly large size, around 5.5, 6 inches. Awesome. Now for the cage setups, well, in this what you need. Again, I'd attempt to keep everything very simple. Little small decorations, optional. A little cave, and a water dish. That's always a must with all these terrestrial species. And most of my terrestrial species that you're going to see in later Mythbuster videos are going to be very, very similar. I don't really tend to over-decorate as much. I tend to keep everything simple, and so you can see the tea a lot more often. Okay, now about the simple care sheet video of the Brachypelma smithi. Well, I'm not going to lie to you, it's very similar to the G. rosea. I tend to keep them around 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is typical standard conditions. So you'll see me be repeating this a lot more often in many of the upcoming Mythbuster videos. Humidity around 75 to 80%. You just keep the water dish full at all times. They like slightly moist substrate, not too wet. If your B.smithi will climb on the glass and stay on the glass, or maybe go on the cave, that tells you that your substrate is too wet. So they really don't appreciate wet substrate. Feeding, I tend to give it mealworms and crickets, especially for a size like Athena and Scarlet. I tend to give them around 2 or 3 crickets once every 2 weeks. Just look at the feeding videos so you can give an idea of my feeding schedule. You can also feed them roaches too, B. dubius. These are excellent diets, and I know I can't use them because of my parents. They won't allow me to use them, which is a little shame, but that's what I have to work with. Yeah, very beautiful species. Okay, so that's basically how you care for the B.smithi. Now I'll talk about its temperament, and lastly its breeding here, as you can see on number 7. Okay, so typical temperaments of Brachypelma smithi. They usually are very docile species. They are fairly handleable, though you might come across one that's really skittish. So I'll just prod Athena a little bit to see how well she acts. See, so this is the way you usually would try to attempt to handle a tarantula. You just prod it on the abdomen and see how it is. If the tarantula will try to turn around and try to face a paintbrush or try to attack it, then you know it's not a great idea to handle her. But otherwise, if it just slowly walks away like you see right now, that means she's fairly handleable. So, because of their docile nature, these are recommended for handling. Athena might be a little skittish, but she's really docile species. Okay, same with Scarlet. She's the fatter one of the two. I tend to use a lot of mealworms to actually feed her. So let's just test her temperament first. As you can see, she really does nothing that much. There we go. It just did a little hair kicking. So B.smithi are very handleable, and I recommend them for new beginners. I tend to recommend them over the G. roseas. Alright, now about their lifespans, about the B.smithi. The B.smithi males tend to live 5 to 7 years before they mature, and then 1 more year after that. So it's best to breed them as soon as possible once they lay their sperm sac and start roaming around. Females live a lot longer than the males. Females generally live between 25 to 30 years. So it's one heck of a long time. So if your B.smithi ends up being a female, you're going to have a real long time with her. And these are a lot of fun species to play with. You know, like I would recommend definitely handling this one over like G. rosea or Brachypelma bomi, the fire leg. Alright, so now about their growth rate. These are very slow growing species, but they are a lot faster than G. rosea. B.smithis, once they start reaching their 2.5 to 3 inch mark, they take maybe about 9 to 12 months before they decide to molt again. Thana has molted recently, probably a couple of months ago. I know Scarlet right here, she has had molted since March of 2009, so she's really due for a molt soon. Okay, now for breeding about these species, these are probably one of the more difficult tarantulas to breed because of their aggression towards the male. But in general, they generally have 400 to 600 babies if you breed them successfully. And you can probably sell them for around $20 to $30 a pop over here. So that's the video of the Brachypelma smithi, Mexican red knee. So I hope you enjoyed it, and the next Mythbusters video will do the P. regalis, the Indian ornamental, and one of my favorite species. Alright guys, see you later.